Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Sam and welcome to the channel.
The reason I started this YouTube channel is to start documenting my progress as an artist, with the idea of having a different goal each week, such as perspective, anatomy, value ranges, giving myself tasks throughout the week and recording the process. So this is the first one. I'm going to be concentrating on implementing 3D into my 2D process. So let's get started. So I started the modelling process with basic geometric forms, placed in position just to get a general composition. Once I was happy with this, I started developing them. I kind of pushed that off to one side as reference and then started detailing out the main 3D model. Overall, the idea with this piece is to create an underground bunker entrance that's been left and abandoned. It's kind of overgrown with kind of props surrounding it. So as you can see now, there are ambient occlusion renders kind of popping in, showing the stages of the development process for 3D. I apologise for not recording the whole process in 3D. The main reason was because I kept zooming in and out and you wouldn't have really been able to see much, so I don't think it would have been helpful. But if you do want to know the process I've used in 3D, please let me know in the comments and I'll be able to create a quick video showing the basic tools that I've used. So I have an ambient occlusion render at this point, which is finished, and then I added a lighting pass as well, which kind of gave me my core shadows. At this point I feel like I've got quite a good base to start the 2D process. So I've already got my lighting set up, I've got my camera set up where I wanted it, so I've gone for quite a basic kind of isometric style view. It's not actually isometric because there is perspective, but I've got the view down, I've got the general assets laid out where I want them. The only issue is when I start the 2D process is it's a flat render. So I cut out each individual asset. To be honest with you, I don't know if that's the best process to use, as it's quite time consuming. So for everything you see on that screen, I have cut out and then added a clipping mask so I can paint on top of it without anything being in the way or getting overrun with the paintbrushes. I think it really helps with the recording process, which is the main reason I did it. So you're not seeing me cut out assets constantly, but I'm not sure if it's the most time efficient way to work. I imagine I can probably export PNGs without a background for each individual asset in the 3D software. But it's not something I know how to do, so I might have to look into that to see if it exists, because if it does, it would definitely speed up the process. So which is why you can see there's so many layers down the right hand side, is because of the clipping masks. Once I've got the basic forms, I created most of the process. On each layer I had a rust texture with a brush, and then start to add a little bit of colour in and change the value ranges. So on the kind of jet engines, you'll see they go kind of lighter to begin with, but then I end up making the blades quite dark. In general, I'm adding kind of patches and, you know, holes, rust, dents, scratches, because the basic form is already there for the 3D model, so it's kind of a detailing exercise really. Things like the ground, I wanted kind of a sandy, kind of overgrown ground with some grass kind of popping through. So I want to talk really about the positives and negatives of my experience using 3D for a piece like this. As I've already touched on, perspective is a big one. I know the perspective's correct, so I have no worry that any of the forms are kind of drawn incorrectly, because I know they can't be. So that's a big positive. The second is being able to choose a camera angle. In 2D, I tend to draw quite a lot of thumbnails if I'm starting in 2D straight away, but quite often I don't push them as far as I probably should. As far as creating a dramatic camera angle as an example, they tend to flatten out. So this way it kind of does it all for you. There's no difficulty in creating a decent camera angle. Another one is being able to move the assets around. It's unbelievably useful just to move something to the left slightly or to the right or up or down. In 2D that might not be possible because of the perspective. You move something to the left, sometimes it throws the perspective completely off, so that is definitely a positive. On top of that is the fact that you can duplicate assets. So you'll see in this piece there's loads of pipes, kind of aircon units, fans, the big jet engines, duplicates, you know, most of them are used more than once. And in 2D that would take a lot longer, obviously in 3D
It takes seconds to kind of duplicate something and move it into a different position, and also it makes you more likely to try things out. So sometimes you experiment more in 3D because you can duplicate something and move it and warp it, and you can do that so quickly. Why wouldn't you? It's also worth noting that these assets, a lot of them are quite generic. So if I have a future piece where I need to do a junkyard, as an example, most of these pieces, or if not all of them, can be used for that. I can duplicate them across, move them, kind of change them if I need to. So the more 3D pieces I work on, the more of a bank that I'll kind of end up with, which obviously is really useful. So to discuss some of the negatives, I tend to find if I'm working over a 3D piece, I will focus too much on details, both in 3D and in 2D. So in this piece, as an example, quite often I'm using quite a small brush because I don't want to ruin the detail that's already there. So I'll use a small brush to add little details like rust or, scratches, where I'm not really focusing on the big forms. I know obviously they're already there to some extent, but I don't think I check the value ranges of the piece overall until quite late on, which actually is a bit of an issue with the piece overall. It's one of my negatives on the piece, is that the value ranges aren't as strong as they could be, and that is because of the process I used. I didn't consider it because I was too busy noodling little rust details, which is obviously something I can fix in 2D. It's not necessarily the problem with the 3D, it just tends to happen more when I'm working in 3D because the model is already there. Another issue with 3D, which is probably the biggest one for me currently, is time. It takes longer to create a 3D model and then work over it in 2D. I mean, that might change the more I do it, if I get faster. Also, like I said with the visual library, if I keep using assets that I've already got, it will speed up. But creating things in 3D, as I said, I tend to focus too much on details, so I end up modelling more than I should, maybe, which kind of affects the piece, slows it down a bit. And then when I go into 2D, again I'm noodling, so it's slower then. So overall I feel like I add too much detail to a 3D model. So I think for future pieces maybe I will consider trying to keep them basic geometric forms, then do the rest in 2D to see how I get on. I think the concern often is when I'm creating a 3D model, if I don't add a detail, my mindset is, well, it will just be harder in 2D. Which sometimes isn't the mindset to take. I think sometimes that's right, and you've got to take the easiest option, but sometimes I need to challenge myself in 2D and say, well, if I'm worried about painting it in 2D, then I probably should be, because it means it's an area that I need to focus on. So yeah, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. Do you use 3D as part of your process? And if so, how much? Do you model as much as me? Do you go into as much detail, or basic geometric shapes just to give you a general idea of the perspective and shape? I found I could have pushed a lot further in the 3D process, which might have actually sped up the 2D process. Now what I mean by that is I kept all the material the same. It's all shiny, so if you go back to the render at the start, it's all one shiny material. If I coloured each object, which was really quick in 3D, and changed the attributes of the material to make it either matte or reflective, and even add textures to the 3D model, then it might have sped up the process even more. The main reason I didn't want to add textures is because I wanted this kind of painterly look, and if I was adding textures it would have been photos, and also I probably would have had to UV the models, which one, I'm not confident in my ability to do, and two, it would just take even longer, so I didn't really see the point. But I mean, it's definitely something to try for the future. Maybe if I can learn how to texture properly, they don't even need to be good because I can edit them in Photoshop, but if texture basic textures might speed up the painting process. I guess it depends on the level of finish that I'm looking for. I wanted to represent the narrative of this place being abandoned for years, but at some point someone did live here and they were trying to gather items to help them leave, which is why you've got jet engines and, you know, things to control power. You've got pipes, you've got wheels, so it looks like they were trying to build some kind of contraption, but they never really got around to it. I could have definitely pushed this narrative element further by including some human elements, maybe a deck chair to show where they spend their evenings, or cups, you know, food items, pizza boxes, something like that. So as this video draws to an end, I'd just like to discuss why I've started the channel and what I'd like to do with it, best case scenario really. So as I said at the start of the video, I want to document my progress and becoming better as an artist. I want to make that a conversation with other artists, so please leave a comment if you've learned something new from the video, or if I'm doing something that you think is wrong or can be improved upon. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, I'd love to hear your thoughts about any future videos that you might want. My plan is to focus on something weekly. This week was obviously implementing 3D into 2D. I'm going to try to cover all the bases to help me improve as an artist. So maybe I'll try to replicate the same piece without the 3D and try to do it all in 2D. Or create the piece in an entirely different style. It might be interesting. So this is the final piece. Overall, I'm relatively happy with it. I think the composition's not too bad. As I said, creating it in 3D definitely helps with that. As previously mentioned, I think the value ranges could be better, which would make it a stronger image. Separating the shadow side to the roof of the bunker, I think would have improved it. And in general, I think I could have been a lot faster with the process. Overall, the piece is quite noodly. There's very small brush marks, kind of scratchy. So I think it could be better if I was a bit bolder with my brush selection, which would have made it simpler. So as a final note guys, if anyone would like to use the 3D model I created, I'd be willing to upload the basic models not arranged in the form that I used them. So each individual asset will be laid out and then you can arrange them, kit bash them any way you want. And I'd love to see the final result and how you paint it up after that. So if that's something you're interested in, please let me know. And I'll try to work out the best way to get it to you. So that's it for the video. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.